the agenda a little bit in hopes that a straggler shows up and gives us the quorum and enables us to conduct our business. But first order of business, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
We have any cards for public comment?
Did not receive.
We're going to skip over approval of the minutes and the action items and hope again that we get one more member that will give us the quorum. And if staff is.
Zink is coming one more. Yeah, I'm coming.
We are saved.
Saved by the bell.
Gentlemen. Nina, do we now have a quorum?
We sure do.
Okay, very good. Then we'll proceed with the agenda as has been outlined. Gentlemen, thank you so much for showing up.
We did our best. We did.
First order of business is to approve our minutes from two meetings, September 8th and October 14th of last year. Do I have a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Green, do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Anybody opposed? Very good, thank you. We'll now go to the first of our action items, and that will be the Transportation Improvement Program Amendments Report from Christie.
I do not have any particular comments. Most of the changes are for transit actions, and they're broken out between Sarasota and Manatee counties. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to try to answer them or just back to you.
Okay. So there's nothing new to report other than what we've seen before?
Yes, there are changes or modifications to certain projects in current year. A lot of the transit projects don't get programmed until the current year. So these are either adding new projects or making changes to existing projects.
Okay, all right. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Hey, Bob.
Hey, sorry, I'm late.
Good to see you. Yeah, thank you. If there's nothing more to report, I guess I'll just simply entertain a motion. Christie? David?
Just say by way of explanation, David, that what this does is it aligns the state's transportation improvement program, or the STIP document, which is adopted every year as a 5-year document, with the MPO's TIP document, transportation improvement plan, that has this year plus another 4 years of projects, and they are required by federal law. Federal funding is involved in particular to be in alignment, and technically the MPO has a say. If it's adding new money for the transit systems, we're all for it. If it's if they were moving money off of a project or onto a project that didn't have local support, it's possible that the MPO could object, and that has happened once or twice over the years. And for a safety project on a state highway, the state could come back and say, like they did a few years back, you need to bring this into alignment, or this could jeopardize other projects within your region. So, we like them to be in alignment, and in this case, these are all projects that staff recommends that the board support these adjustments to the funds or phases of these particular programs. projects.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, these changes were made to the department's work program. And so, like you said, we're making sure that the tip and the stip are consistent with the department's work program.
Any projects of note that you would care to comment on?
I'll add one
Right.
for that essence. The one that I would focus on, you'll notice the number of these are related to, as Christie stated, operational improvements and grants for a lot of our transit agencies. Those are standard, just do those limits every year. The one I would have known, Bobby Jones Golf Course Circus Trail. That's a new project that we're working with the city of Sarasota and county on to build a Sun Trail segment through Bobby Jones connecting up to 17th Street and Nathan Bitterst Park. So that is a project of note. We added $550,000 ALU funds, which is our federally allocated TA, transportation alternative money. So we think that's a great priority that's advancing in a fairly quick timeline. So we're happy to see that project moved into the work program instead. So that's one project of note. The rest I would say are fairly standard.
Very good. Terrific.
Yeah, just to sort of tag on to that, we started our new state fiscal year on July 1st. And of the 12 counties for District 1 and 6 MPOs, we had $26 million in contingency funds, which is not good. So there was a big push from our work program unit to coordinate with MPOs to get the contingency down to the percentages that the legislature allows. So on July 1st, fiscal year 26 had 72 projects and fiscal year 27 had 48. And by November 5th, when the work program development cycle closed, 26 had 97 projects and 27 had 62. So the increase in projects for fiscal year 26 was 25 or 35% increase. And for 27, it was 14 projects or a 29% increase. So being able to work with the MPOs, particularly with Ryan, this was one of the projects that we sort of did a big collaboration with the city, with the MPO, with the department to get this project funded.
Any of our friends from Sarasota County have any questions about that particular one? Is there anything else you want to add, Christy?
Yes, the legislative session will kick off tomorrow and is set to conclude on March 13th. We have a total, as of last week, we had a total of 30 legislative member projects come in, a total of 167 million from the House and 79 million from the Senate. And there are a couple of processes that we do with the MPO, the UPWP. The current one is going to be wrapping up June 30th. And so we'll start a new 2-year cycle on July 1 for state fiscal years 27 and 28. And we're also working with the MPO through the joint certification process.
Terrific. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 5A, the Transportation Improvement Program amendments.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Green, have a second down there.
Second.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Action item 5B, the 2022-2026 safety target setting. Nick?
Thank you. So this is something we do annually, so new year, new. Okay, so this is something we do annually. We set our, one of the performance measures, we have to set our safety targets, and like I said, these are annual targets and we submit these to FDOT in February. And these safety performance measures that we follow are the number and rate of fatalities, the number and rate of serious injuries, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. These are 5-year rolling averages, and the rates are calculated per 100 million daily vehicle miles per hour. So why do we do this? They're federally mandated, and the MPO basically has two broad options. We can either support the statewide safety targets set by FDOT, or we can establish our own safety targets. So just a quick refresher, what safety targets are. Would say it's a statement of policy direction and priorities for our transportation system, and is a framework for monitoring trends and informing project selection, not necessarily predicting outcomes. And it's a way to coordinate safety goals among regional partners. What safety targets are not. We don't gain or lose money depending on if we meet the targets that we set. And so basically we don't get penalized for not meeting these targets. And it's certainly no replacement for the data-driven safety analysis and project selection that we already do. And we are not saying that this is a prediction or guarantee of future crash outcomes. So with that said, the MPO has historically set targets of 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries. As you can see in the lower left, we have a whole branding around Destination Zero, which provides a clear public-facing commitment to safety. It's very easy to see where the MPO stands on this, just from the branding and everything that we do. A numerical target based on trends, it makes it a little uncomfortable if you say it's destination 100 fatalities or destination 600 serious injuries, and it keeps safety at the forefront of all of our transportation decisions and reinforces a shared statewide commitment with FDOT's Vision Zero and many of the other MPOs. And the focus is on continuous improvement. So we know 0 is kind of a long shot, but we're not going to say our work is done if we see, say, a 5% reduction year over year. So what do other MPOs in Florida do? Last year, 21 supported the statewide target of 0 and 6 set their own target. Some of those approaches were the percent reduction from prior year targets, a percent reduction needed to reach 0, and others were maintaining current numbers. So once again, FDOT, in alignment with their Target 0 initiative, adopted 0 fatalities, 0 serious injuries, and 0 non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries for 2026. And for the Sarasota Manatee MPO, we're projected to see 111 fatalities, which is a 1.29 fatality rate. 774 serious injuries and a 5.4 serious injury rate, and 164 non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And what you can see is a decrease from prior years, but with our commitment to 0, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And our proposed targets this time around are still as similar to prior years, 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries. And that includes our non-motorized injuries as well. So the MPO also supports, the MPO board also votes to support transit safety targets from MCAT, Manatee County, and Breeze, and Sarasota County. And their safety targets are based on prior trends and outcomes that they're expecting. So you can see here, it's not 0, but it's based on their own data. So for MCAT, we have for their fixed route, 0 fatalities, 0 injuries, but they are shooting for below 12 safety events total and system reliability of 5,500 per mile. And similar for paratransit with 5 safety events total and 0.8 safety event rate for ERM. And similar for Breeze. I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but see what they propose, and we have no reason to doubt that they're realistic and not worth supporting. So with that, the MPO is asking for a motion to support a safety target of 0 again this year, as well as supporting the transit safety targets that they've provided us. With that, I'll take any questions.
What defines, I asked why, what defines an accident again, because if that motorist at 3 o'clock in the morning decides they're gonna drag race down 75 and then they get into a situation where they're in a fatality, that's not an implementation about what the system is doing or how our roads are or the signage, does that count towards?
Yeah, it does.
And that's where the struggle is.
Yes.
right? Because human stupidity sometimes can get us in trouble, and it's not about the systems that we are approving and funding and building.
Yeah, that only takes you so far, really. It takes you most of the way there, but with human error and human decision, it's a little difficult to get to account for all of that for sure.
And if I may add, I think both FDOT and the MPO sort of works with this notion of the safe systems approach, that there are several factors that go into a safe transportation system, and that planning and engineering is just one component, and human behavior and decision-making and risk-taking is certainly another component. And so some of the work that the MPO is doing and our other partners is focusing also on education and trying to get more towards the behavior changing element, because we know that planning and engineering alone isn't going to get us to zero. So, but yes, if there's a crash report, it does add to the numbers, yes.
Thank you.
Are we making progress?
Yeah, I mean, if you can go back to that, it's certainly been decreasing lately, and as I mentioned in the interim report last year, some of that has to do with 2020 finally falling out of the 5-year rolling averages, because that was a year with quite low daily vehicle miles traveled, but significantly higher fatalities and serious injuries. So we're seeing that, and as I'll get into later, there's also been a lot of safety investments that are having a real impact. So I'd say we're getting there.
So say, outside of Sarasota Manatee, we're gonna contract with the FDOT Central Office, the State Safety Office. And they've done a lot of analysis on this, looking at the return on investment for dollars spent specifically focused on safety. We are getting like a 15+ benefit cost ratio. So even though serious injuries, I think it's serious injuries are going down, fatalities are about steady or up. Statewide, you may not be seeing a massive change, but the projects that are actually focused on fixing things are actually fixing things. So that's where it gets a little bit difficult, because you think about the amount of times we're actually putting a project on the road versus putting a project that's focused on safety on the road versus all the other lane miles that are untouched. So when we look where the money investments are statewide, where it is focused on solving safety problems, we are making significant investments. Cortez, where they put all the Hawks in District 1, did an APRA study on that. It shows significant reductions. Greyhawk and Wright Road out of the roundabouts are significant reductions. There's a number of ones around where, once again, I'm trying to reiterate this point, where we put the money, it makes a difference. So when you're seeing the trends, it doesn't necessarily mean decisions and the projects you're making aren't making a difference. It just means that you have a bucket with a lot of holes. You are plugging the ones you're putting your fingers on.
So is there a trigger that then will get us to it? Let's say the same off ramp has had 7 fatalities. Does that trigger something with FDOT to say, hey, listen, we've got to fix this now. We can't do a 10-year.
So FDOT every year does high crash lists, and they slice it different ways, right? So they might look at nighttime crashes, they look at fatal severe injury crashes, like head crashes. John Kubicki and Keith Robbins have a list where it's more of a matrix than a list. So they're looking for those, looking for new ones that pop up. The problem is, especially in this area, the way development patterns have happened with roadways, especially on US 41, there are so many areas that 7 crash one probably isn't that right.
So we have this discussion every year, and exactly what you told us, that the money that we're spending is doing a good job, is what I would like to get tied to these goals, that we continue to focus on. When money is spent, it shows up, but it's never going to make it zero. But how can we put our message into this to say that that is what we want to have continue to happen?
Maybe you measure the effectiveness of your projects.
Yeah. And exactly what you're doing. So how do we do that and adopt these goals, but make sure that the board and the public knows that we're trying to make sure our money is being spent on the right places and safety?
The Department of Transportation and the MPO has supported this, has basically adopted a safe systems approach where everything they do, even though it might not be labeled a safety project, it's going to incorporate a higher level of consideration for safety and the effects that it'll have on safety than it would have, let's say, 15 years ago, where the emphasis was more on let's get the traffic through as quickly as we can. That's congestion and reduction of congestion is still a pretty high priority in the overall scheme of things. Resurfacing by how many miles did we get resurfaced is still a big measure for FDOT. So they're not devoting every dollar to resolving safety issues, but safety is highly considered in every project. And I think that, we see, you're gonna hear about some of the countermeasures that have been done both by local jurisdictions and DOT, some with support from federal dollars through the MPO and others through other initiatives. In a little bit, Nick's going to report on that. So that linking of the investments that we're making in the system to the results we're seeing in safety is happening slowly but surely.
Do we get an idea of some of the messaging that's out there that we hear is like Moccasin Wall is a death trap, Rye Road is a death trap? Do we have data on those specific locations that we would know fatalities, so that when we're hearing this at our commissioner meetings, for example, that
What we do, we've mapped the high injury network and have identified hot spots. And sometimes there's some validity to some of what you might have heard, and other times, something happened and it, it may or may not be backed up by the executive.
Thank you.
Sometimes people make things up.
If any of those have safety projects programmed on them, so it's something FDOT and the MPO are aware of.
Well, one of the things too, there's just been a shift from total crashes to severe injury crashes. So I use Jacaranda as a good example. When they did the rebuild of Jacaranda, there's all the newspaper articles about crashes still being up and FDOT went in. The project was successful. The crashes went up, but there was no severe injury crashes. There's no fatalities. So they did improvements to further reduce the crashes, which is good. But we don't even want any crashes, right? But we're struggling. We're focusing on the worst ones because we got to focus somewhere. So that is one thing too. When you're looking at the crashes, a lot of times we hear about it. They may not always be severe crashes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a way to develop a list? Let's just take the top number of fatalities, that 120 or that 119 for that overall. Is there a way to chart the most frequent or the areas where the most frequent fatalities are happening?
Yeah, that would be our we have the high injury network and
kind of get to where we're talking.
Yeah.
Because then that would be pretty meaty to bring back to city councilors, the commissioners.
I've seen the map.
So we've identified a high injury network where I forget the exact percentage breakdown, but it's most of the fatal and serious injury crashes occur on the same roadways, the same regional roadways, and we've done work to kind of refine that. So taking the high injury network and then, identifying 1 mile segments of where it's the worst for total KSI.
It's about 65% on 19. So if you can make a significant impact on 19 segments, you reduce it by almost 3 quarters.
There you go.
And that's like those areas are identified in our LRTP. There's a safety element that's pretty complex, and also an action plan, implementation plan that is part of the LRTP and feeds into our prioritization criteria. So that would be a good place to start as far as, what's already been assembled and some of those hotspot maps that exist. And, we can probably highlight some of those at a future meeting.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, and those are certainly where FDOT and our own prioritization, we focus on those roadways, because as Brian said, that's where the bulk of them are. And there's certainly plenty of safety projects programmed or planned to improve those areas.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve action item 5B. that we recommend to the board adoption of our proposed 2022-2026 safety targets for Sarasota Manatee County region and support the transit safety targets set by the MCAT and the Sarasota Breeze Transit in their respective public transportation agency safety programs.
So moved.
Thank you. Second from Mr. Green. Any other further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. Action item 5C. Thank you, Nick. The top 10 accomplishments and 2026 strategic priorities presented by Grace and Nina.
I will be Grace and Nina today.
Nina's gonna do it by herself.
Luckily Grace left me with some notes. So every year, we like to reflect on what we accomplished in the previous year and then also strategize what we would like to accomplish over the next year, so we can make sure we're on the right track. So the full list of the top 10 accomplishments is included in your agenda package. So I'm not going to go through it in detail, but just want to offer some highlights. So at the top of the list, we put the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan. This was a 2-year long-range planning effort. It involved a great deal of public involvement, stakeholder input, and a great deal of data analysis. And on top of that, also many years of planning work. And so we adopted that in October 2025. And so that'll be our North Star, our guiding planning document for the next 5 years when we update that again. We also completed our quadrennial federal certification review. This is something that we do every 4 years with Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. Thank you. And happy to say that we passed with flying colors. We had no corrective actions and we had 3 noteworthy practices. Ryan will present on that later, so I'm not gonna go into that. So that was a pretty heavy lift as well, and something that we completed this year and we'll do again in 4 years. We're also tracking priorities funded in the draft tentative work program. We are making good progress on the MPO priorities, and some of those trail projects like Bobby Jones is one of those. And that project actually came right out of an MPO planning study, so we're happy to see these projects moving forward. We're also advancing several new regional planning studies. We've adopted several last year and we're kicking off several now in this month of January. A good bit of public engagement as always, hosted a public workshop, 2 events, surveys, continued our newsletter and social media with some creative content. We also kind of rolled out our safety education campaign. This is sort of our approach to dealing with the education and the behavior piece of safety. And so at the top of that really is putting out some safety educational videos that you can check out on our YouTube, and then also doing a blog that is in our newsletter that we update sort of semi-monthly. We're also looking at working with our FDOT partners to get safety into some of the schools in the Sarasota Manatee area as well. Something that they've already worked out in Polk. We hope that brings it down here. Transit coordination is ongoing. A good bit of that happened with the Long Range Transportation Plan when we set up quarterly transit coordination meetings with Breeze Transit. So we'll be moving that forward as well. Administrative and organizational advancements, one of them being this epic office move, which just happened in December. Staff attended presentations and panels across the country talking about our planning work, and then we hosted a plethora of committee and MPO board meetings. So that's just an overview of kind of what we think we've accomplished over the last year. So before I move into priorities, any questions or comments?
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you to you all too for attending all of those meetings and participating in the outreach and input. So when we look at strategic priorities, we tend to organize our work in 4 major categories. So I'll start with planning. In the mandates column, this is work that we do every year. The safety performance targets being one of them that you all just acted on. Our 2026 project priorities, which we'll go over a draft of today. The tentative work program, which will be adopted later this year. We'll develop a TIP, our transportation improvement program, which will come to this committee as well. And then ongoing collaboration with partners. Late last year, we kicked off an organizational safety culture improvement plan. This is sort of a next step in work that we did in early 2024 to really take a look at the work that the MPO as an organization is doing around safety and how we can better build it into our processes and our planning. And it's really going to be a first step for us in a strategic plan for the MPO as a whole. So we just kicked that off and we're excited to see and report back in May. Kicked off a regional freight analysis, a regional transit feasibility study, and then a watershed and transportation asset analysis, which is sort of the next phase of our resiliency and vulnerability work for the region. When we're looking at implementing the LRTP, we'll be working with our jurisdictional partners to do a project prioritization process update, which is something that we do every few years. And this helps us prioritize the eligible projects relative to the available funding, making sure that they line up with the goals and objectives set in the long-range transportation plan. We also acquired a new data platform called Locus. So we'll be getting ourselves set up on that. And then this data will also be available to all of our jurisdictional partners as well. That gives us a little bit more insight into what's happening in our region. Will help with our planning studies, and it's also available for our partners. And then the long-range transportation plan. Every single one of those bullet points that you see under the plan is a planning initiative that we completed over the last 5 years, and that was brought to this committee for review and discussion. And so this is a way of seeing that the planning work that we will be doing over the next 5 years is going to be informing the next LRTP. So it's nice to see all of that put together. On the administration end, we'll be updating the UPWP this year, working with FDOT on the state certification, which Christy mentioned, reviewing policies, more committee meetings, and then reporting back on the top 10 and our strategic priorities. And then engagement, working with the board in our advisory committees to onboard and orient everyone, working on our Destination Zero safety education campaign, continuing to coordinate on the Gulf Coast Trail, and doing outreach for our cities.
Terrific.
Any questions or comments?
On your second or third slide, you had something as watershed and something studies. What is you connecting to watersheds?
So in the first phases of the resiliency and vulnerability, we looked at storm surge, we looked at nuisance flooding, and we looked at wildfires. And some of the experiences that we had with the most recent storms is that we're sort of seeing flooding in areas that previously, it wasn't normal. And so what MPO staff recommended was let's take another look, but really look at the watershed and see how the watershed impacts our transportation assets as well. And really the goal is to maybe have this set us up for looking at sort of projecting out into the future. So we can get an idea of future hazards, expected rainfall, storms, but then also future land use development. So this is sort of a way for us to build on resiliency and vulnerability, but then also look at what can we potentially do moving forward, so that we're planning proactively and sort of retroactively. If that doesn't make sense, I'm going to point to Ryan because I think that's his brainchild.
No, I would just add that. It's a great explanation. I think I would just add, all in all, we've had requests by our local agencies to help with that and understanding where water travels, right? So I think there's been a lot of, let's say, hearsay without a lot of data behind it to say, where does water come from? Where does it travel? Where does it go? And what does it impact, right? So our assets are very expensive. They tend to be in areas that are high hazard. Same with the built environment. We've been asked to look at not only our transportation assets, but also residences, businesses, hospitals, key shelters, to make sure that we understand, do we have access to those types of events? So a number of evacuation routes during Helene and Milton be negatively impacted and were actually unusable. Those are things that we'd like to better understand and making sure that our water conveyance methods are actually working and moving water in the appropriate locations, making sure our canals are cleared and contained. All those things that tie into this, but from a transportation asset analysis essentially. So it's a multi-figure part. We're working with estuary programs, regional planning councils, both counties, cities within, to kind of get a better understanding of what we can do from a regional and state perspective.
So in essence, you're looking for which watersheds are the post?
Or where water is traveling based off of new development patterns too, right? So if there's a lot of discussion and talk that new development has impacted water flow, right?
Exactly.
Where water can head. A lot of that is unfounded until we have wastewater management districts and plans in place, which are already occurring with the counties. It's combining that with where our assets might lie, where we're proposing $100 million improvements on I-75, for example. Understanding how those things overlap and then making sure that those investments are sound and safe.
We put a lot of effort into trying to help our governing board, local elected officials understand the projected growth and future transportation or travel demand forecasts. And we actually can see where that future growth and travel demand is also going to, might it impact our water flowways or the amount of water that needs to be conveyed. And, you know, again, 15, 20 years ago, the largest developments did extensive analysis to make sure that they were not going to have significant impacts off of their sites. And some of that level of analysis no longer occurs. And with regards to the impacts on transportation and related critical infrastructure, the MPO can at least put out a framework for delving into that. And you know, we're not building a digital twin. We're not going to try to answer every question related to resilience because it gets way too expensive. But we can, you know, take this to the next level and further refine the plans that we've already identified that need to be, you know, considered. And this will help refine future investments.
So it's more what watersheds are doing to impact transportation assets versus what transportation assets are doing to cause problems in the watershed. Okay.
All the above. They're interoperable and interchangeable.
But it's not planning transportation on a watershed basis.
No.
Like you would have.
How they
Right.
react, interact with it.
This watershed should get so many
Correct.
new miles of
Or,
highway and this one should get.
There'll be conversations about
Okay.
River Road.
And when I first read that, I thought that meant you're gonna start planning,
No,
we're gonna put roads based on what watershed they're in. Okay.
it's a broad categorization.
Any other questions?
Just, I was gonna say, just to that point though, too, doesn't that maybe at least put the transportation experts at the table with the planning experts to a higher degree? So that there's better planning done, looking at all parts of the.
I think, and there's been overlap for years, you know, prior to 2020, our current authorization bill, the IIJA, Infrastructure Jobs Act on the federal government, one of the new requirements was understanding investing in resiliency from a transportation perspective. Prior to that, it was purely elective. We had the option to invest in these things. So this is you know, we've been working in this realm at least for the last 5 years. This is just another step to then bring, you know, estuary partner programs, bring in regional planning councils to the north and in the south. North have done a great job doing a lot of predictive analysis based off of rainfall events and stuff like that, understanding Dallas County, for example, how are they built out? Where does their water head? Where does it go? A lot of there has to do with conveyance. We've got a lot more open land still, so it's understanding how that works. And to the point, you know, if we build a large facility, what is the impact to the surrounding environment?
And does it change design
Correct.
potentially?
Elevating roadways and what impact
Absolutely.
that has to surrounding.
Yep.
Right.
Good questions. Any others? Good report, Nina. I will now entertain a motion that we recommend to the board the 2025 top 10 accomplishments and the 2026 strategic priorities. Motion to approve. Mr. Green,
I said.
second, Mr. Tran. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. We'll now move to action item 5D, transportation investment analysis. Nate?
Nathan Couts. So, I'm gonna do this a little bit different, than what we did this morning. But the Transportation Investment Act looking at where transportation investments are being made and how to get them from the planning stage to the implementation. 78 projects in the NPO's 25 listed priority projects have been listed for multiple years. So the idea is, if these projects are hanging out for multiple years, why are they? Is it a legitimate reason? Not a legitimate reason? What do we need to do to get them to implementation a little bit faster? A lot of the big goal of this is improving coordination between the NPO and the partner agencies and trying to get those local priorities through. So the overview of the analysis, we looked at 10 years of FDOT state transportation improvements, like we heard earlier, the STIP, track the evolution of projects in the STIPs, and then examine 10 years of NPO list of priority projects, track those in the STIPs, and then conducted interviews. So essentially just looked at the numbers of projects, what years they were in, how it fell, where the money went, and then identified a few successes, a few failures, had conversations mostly with FDOT staff, as well as, I mean, Dave is a great resource, as well as Dave from the NPO side, seeing what happened, trying to pull out those bits and pieces of what could have gone better or what did go really well. Regional context, you're familiar, we're all in District 1, 6,000 centerline miles, and our NPO, 1,100 centerline miles. Moving to this, I'm going to get into some data numbers. I wouldn't stress over the data numbers that much, right? The story is what comes out of it with the projects. What we're going to look at here is the trends of what was programmed, where the money went, and what got done. This helped direct us to the right location, right? You think 3 to 5 years is a good work program schedule. But let's say you run into NEPA issues. Clark Davis brought some good points up today earlier. Right of way, it can push it out. There could be a legitimate reason you might have an 8-year project or more. But what it is, what I will say is, you find very few projects with issues inside of 5 years. So if it's outside 5 years, there may not be any issue, but that's also what we find the most ones. So it's kind of our red flags of knowing where to look. So if we look at our projects, the number of projects are on the y-axis, a number of STIPs that they appear in. So essentially the number of years they're in the STIP are on the x-axis. We got, I think, 400, it's around 450 projects. Of those, 147 projects were in more than 5 STIPs. So not bad, right? 75% of the projects are getting done when they in a normal project cycle. But those 147, 43 were pushed out past 8. We're in the 9, 10, and 11 years. Now we're going to look at the expenditures. So the red line is what was programmed. So that's saying, hey, we think, we're going to have $10 million worth of jobs. We're going to have $350 million worth of jobs. The green line is what's actually spent on those jobs. So that could be that the spending was decreased. We got it for cheaper, not likely, but it's possible. Or it could mean that maybe a project is moved out, so that money is taken out of that year, which is the most likely scenario. 82% of the program STIP money is spent in the program year. 42 million more was spent in the program in 2015. It's kind of an outlier. We never saw that anywhere else in the analysis. 78 million less was spent in the program in the year 2022. Now, that was all the projects. Looking at the list of priority projects, 36 priority projects were carried more than 5 years. 22 were carried more than 8 years. And then if we look at the program versus the actual expenditures, 63% of the money programmed for list priority projects is spent in the planned year. So there is an indication that there's something going on with the priority projects versus the entire STIP. In 2018, 95% of the programmed amount was spent in 2018, and less than 30% programmed amount was actually spent in 2022 and 2023. That's a pretty decent discrepancy. So let's look at SU funding. 86% of SU programmed on NPO priorities, and then of that, the 30% of the SU programmed in priorities is spent on those projects. That analysis by itself doesn't tell us anything more than we need to look into stuff, right? We're seeing the discrepancies
At that point, it's why. It could be a legitimate deal. We're having right-of-way issues, we're having utility issues, or it might not. So we started to look at a few of, say, some of the completed ones, the success stories. US 41 in Fruitville. One of the things that came out of this is that the city was dedicated to making it happen. They were championing the project. They were putting off other priorities in favor of this one. Every project has its challenges. This one was particularly challenging location. So they made it a point to say, hey, whatever we need to do, this is going to get done. And they worked with FDOT to make it happen. I-75, Sumter Boulevard to Toledo Blade. The key thing we found in this is alignment of priorities. City of Northport, the MPO, and FDOT all had that as a priority for them. So with all three of them working together, once again, working together is the key part, right? Able to get that done. And then with Honoré Avenue, one of the things there was evaluating what the need was and what could fill that need in a more efficient way. So instead of doing an operational improvement that's maybe looking at widening where you have a really massive project that might take a decade or two, looking at ITS technologies, like trying to make the road smarter to make it work better. That's a year in the step. Looking at, and then we looked at some of these other projects, trying to find out what's going on, some of the more challenging ones. So with the Palmetto Trails Network, there's been funding allocated, but strong progress wasn't made. It ends up, through some of the conversation, there's discussion on who needs to run with the ball, a lot of that, and maybe a lack of a strong champion. With the 10th Avenue, it is currently in design, so that is going forward, but there's still getting to that conversation of who's going to do this, who's going to do that, how that relationship happens. 41 in Blackburn, a lot of that is a cost issue. That was a much larger project, eventually pushed into 6 smaller segments. Those segments take on their own life. There's pros and cons to that, right? The pro is you can take bite-sized chunks. You might not get the whole project, but you can hit those smaller chunks as you go. The downside of it is that now those smaller chunks are out there. They may not have as much of a priority or impetus as you would a much larger project. Through those interviews, looking into those projects, we spoke with the program management office with FDOT, and we also spoke with the design office, getting in not just to one individual, but speaking to some of the PMs, as well as the district design engineers, both over the whole thing, the project management team and the in-house design, just getting an idea of what do you see being an issue. The things that came up, cost estimates. Nothing's getting cheaper, and right now it's getting kind of hard to predict how much the cost estimates are going to go up. I know for our firm, in a lot of cases, we're putting just 30% on the top. Like we have everything else that we're trying to project, and we're adding it, and it's still sometimes getting close to where it's supposed to be. Funding and life cycle planning, figuring out how you're going to fund it. What funds are you going to use? Do you have a plan to go from planning to PD&E to design to construction? Do you have a full path forward? Or are you just saying, hey, we have some money to do PD&E, let's do PD&E, and that's where it ends? Phasing, scheduling, project scoping, coordination and communication, utilities, and legislative amendments. So with project scoping, this was seen to be one of the bigger issues, making sure that the right content and clarity is in the project scopes. There needs to be, we feel, a kind of almost like a handoff meeting or a conversation, depending on who's going to be taking the project and running with it, of what you're wanting. You know, is it okay to have kind of a back of napkin planning level analysis, or do we need to get into a more 15% plans, engineer's estimate to really figure out what we're doing, nail it down, define it, and move forward. Utility coordination, this is common in all projects. I think the lesson here is early. Get in before and say, we're going to say, hey, we got this great idea for a project. Send it before we send it to somebody else to run with it, making sure that we've identified who the utilities are and what it's going to take.
It may be a low risk project and we can just move forward without an additional analysis or effort. And there may be a gas line, but we really need to get into that coordination with the gas company and figure it out. Maybe in hand with the implementing partner to move forward with it. Cost estimates and rising costs. This is unavoidable. I think the simplest method here is just making sure that we are early and often updating our estimates. Understanding that when we're looking at outer years, it's going to climb quite a bit, do those projections and just keep revisiting it. Phasing and scheduling. A lot of this is there's no one single panacea that's going to fix that. It's just the coordination and communication aspect, making sure that everybody is talking, making sure that there's somebody that is a point of contact for them. So if I'm calling Goss and Associates, I know Bob. Bob might not be doing the work, but he'll get me to the right person. And I think it's having that to where you're not trying to communicate with somebody, not finding that person, and then the project sits because you have other things to do, and you can't make progress on that. Champions are good. One thing with legislative priorities as well. Christy was talking a little bit earlier about contingencies. There's only so much contingency. There's so much money to go around. When legislative amendments come up, it takes away from either the contingency or the projects in that area. There's only so much money. So when it comes up, it's dictated that you're going to spend this, something has to get pushed out. A lot of times, FDOT, my understanding is that they try to push out a project in the area that the amendment comes from, but it's not always possible. So reiterating all of that, we want to establish clear goals early in the project development process, clarify the scope, cost, and utility coordination, identify a project champion to coordinate broadly, and then agency partners participate in PO meetings. There's nothing special here, right? It's project management 101, it's communication. But it is identifying that we do have those problems in some of those projects where communication is breaking down and making sure that we're deliberate about it. Next steps, adopting the 2050 long range transportation plan. We want to kick off a major prioritization update with stakeholders. We want to implement a more formal internal project tracking process. If you're tracking the projects, the more closely you can see where something might be getting a little squirrely and apply a little bit more of a guiding hand to it. And persistent communication, coordination, and collaboration. Like I said, those are all business buzzwords, but when it comes down to it, our industry requires a lot of coordination with multiple disciplinary partners. If we're not having that coordination and communication, it's not going to work well. Any questions?
One question, Nate, is there a role for our board or this committee in this process for you?
I think that would depend on, so I think supporting Ryan and their goals is always good, right? In terms, because this is one of the things the MPO is focusing on, is making sure that it's getting done. I think any unofficial championing always helps. We've done projects in the past where that's become an issue, where it becomes having that person that cares about a project, being able to make the calls, or even if it's just in a meeting, say, hey, what's going on with this, to make sure that it continues to go. I mean, I hate to say it, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And in our industry, we have more priorities than we have resources. So a lot of times the loudest priorities are the ones that get focused on.
David?
Yeah, I think that when we get to the point where the technical advisory committee is updating the prioritization criteria, project deliverability is probably going to end up being elevated a little bit in that process so that we can eliminate some of the problems that have been identified. And sometimes that might be tightening up the priority list. The priority process in the LRTP already tries to make sure that if it makes it to the priority list, it's a good project. And so then we have to choose, okay, well, which ones can we actually get delivered in a reasonable amount of time, given the projected funds available? So when when we get to that point, I think supporting emphasizing project deliverability early in that process will be helpful. So you all can definitely support that. And that would be an important role.
I think one thing to keep in mind too, while we're doing it, is to Dave's point about deliverability and being able to have a path to implementation. It's making sure that when we're prioritizing projects, we understand that priorities are shifting, but making sure that, hey, when something's in the hopper, you keep it through the hopper without significant changes. Because every time we go back to touch a project or we move something out, put something else in, it's deep. There's an opportunity cost almost. There's a cost of like having to remobilize and get geared up on that project again when you're not planning on it. And that seems to derail a little bit as well. Because I know talking with some of the FDOT PMs, it's one of those where they'll unofficially kind of on the side talking like, hey, I have this project. Sometimes we're doing stuff on it. Sometimes we're not. I can't, so I might not be able to get in touch with somebody, and then maybe they'll come up asking what's going on with it. But then I have these projects to work on. So it's that human side of it's not defined in my job, but I know I have to get these things done. So I might deprioritize it. So there's always having that consistent momentum is always good with projects as well.
Just one thought. I may be naive, I may not totally understand the prioritization process and the various lists that we have, but it seems like I get the feeling that projects are kind of put on the bottom of the list just to make sure Sarasota County, Manatee County, City of Venice doesn't get upset that the project is gone. Instead, let's make the tough decision and say that project's not going to make it. And then we won't have as many projects that stay on the list for 10 years. But I don't know if that politically you can do that or not, but it's one thing that I guess this committee could be somewhat involved in to say, yeah, why just make us feel good and say, your project for a sidewalk here got on the list, but there's no chance it's going to happen in the next 5 years. That thing is, I did have another.
Yeah, I know that
Yeah, I saw a lot of smiles in there, but.
You'll see this in just a second. We've started that process. You'll see a massive restructuring of our priority list due to the adoption of the new LRTP. So you will see that some are recognized as being viable and eligible for S2 dollars and TA dollars that are NPL prioritized. Others are unfunded needs or are not, recognized at all within our process. We're saying it might be priorities for that jurisdiction. However, they're not something that we can address as a regional agency. So you will see that process will continue to evolve. Dave mentioned later this year, in the next cycle, we'll be looking at revisiting that process and narrowing further. To your point, to carry things forward that, I think previously mentioned too, 3 or 4 board cycles go by, the project might sit there. It no longer has a champion. A lot of these do require a consistent champion to make sure they actually have legs to stand on and they actually make themselves through the process. Otherwise, they might just sit there as a placeholder and until maybe one day money comes along and falls out of the sky and we can continue working on it. There are a lot of elements to it, pieces to it, but yes, limiting our priority list is certainly a priority.
My original question was, Christie mentioned 36 legislative amendment projects. Does the MPO know that we have any projects within our MPO that are going to show up on that list?
Yes,
And can you plan for those so that the money doesn't get taken away from another project and say?
There's a challenge there too, right? So when you look at legislatively, it's a 2-month session here. They have to get a lot done. They have to make a lot of decisions on those things. Typically, we've seen that highway trust fund where transportation dollars are spent. Typically, if you ask for appropriation for a transportation project, it's going to come out of that bucket. Now, there might have been a couple of years where general revenue might have been used and it wouldn't have adversely affected or impacted our program. However, that has not been the case the last 3 years, and 36 is probably near the top that we've ever requested this year, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of requests. So all that being said, yes, you could have a negative impact on process projects, we like to call them, things that have been through our process and have been voted on by you, by our board, for something that is just now legislatively work, right? So something comes along and like to see Moccasin Wall done faster, like to see River Road done faster, whatever it might be, that can then take precedent and wipe out some of the work that's done in the process. So DOT's made that clear today.
So the way you answer the question is the way I took Christie's comment. It's a good thing to have a legislative amended project. But I was thinking as you gave the presentation that means money from another
Correct.
Sarasota Manatee County MPO project is going away.
Zero sum.
Is it possible you get money from another MPO's budget? It's always within your budget?
Balance within your own region, right?
Right.
Last year's a very simple example, there was money on Spring Trail we talked about earlier, was Sun Trail dollars. That was repurposed to appropriation on IVIS east of 75. It was pretty much a 1-to-1 split. So they look at it as a way to resonate. Now, if nobody else requested statewide, unlikely, I would say in this day and age, everyone wants their projects done faster. And maybe you do when it wind up winning some work. We've got people, I will acknowledge that we do have people in the transportation subcommittee. Our state reps are in a position, I would say, of power for the next couple of years. They will likely request more and have been told to do so. So there is a balancing of, you know, do you want your project now and want the money now for something more specific, or do you want to potentially impact the long-term project priority? It's trade-off.
Any other question? Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I didn't have one. I'm just looking at you.
Gotcha. In the technical advisory committee, do you have the folks that are right there that can talk about these projects moving back and forth and whatever reasons why? It's a very active group that obviously meet similar to our advisory board. Is that the type of person you have for the municipalities on that committee?
I think
Or
you have a
never gets together?
I think you have a representative from every major agency that could fill that. Whether they do fill that role is, I can't speak on. I would imagine there's gonna be some things like, Clark Davis is here, but it might not be Clark Davis. He might have delegated something to a PM or chaplain, so.
Yeah, I would typically say, you know, the people here that are represented on RTAC are higher ranking.
I know the one from the state of Venice is.
Yes.
But is he in directly in saying, okay, I know you gotta take, we were thinking this was a priority, but this is a higher priority, we know that's gonna happen.
They do that, yes.
Okay.
They make those decisions, and they also, to Nathan's point, work directly downward with people that actually are project managers for this.
And sometimes they don't, because they say, well, our board adopted all of these as priorities, so I can't tell you to rank one higher than the other.
I think
It's all possible too.
I think the challenge, and that's a really good start, and that should be happening. I think the challenge with that though is let's say you're working on like a lab project and you have a DOT PM that's wanting to talk to a local agency. They're probably not, that DOT PM probably isn't going to reach out, I mean, just pick on Clark, but to Clark Davis or Paula Wiggins to get information on that. They're gonna want to find their counterpart that instigated the project on that side, right? And that's where they want that more of a, I don't want to say it's day-to-day because it's not gonna be that frequent most likely, but that style of a communication. Paula's not gonna want to get involved in a media enclosure somewhere else until it becomes like she'll be aware of it, but like that, the PM that's in charge of that area is probably the one that's gonna be wanting to have that conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
Good report, Nate. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I will now entertain a motion that we recommend to the MPO board adoption of this transportation investment analysis. Motion to adopt? Mr. Green again, we have a second down there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. We now move on to action item 5E, safety countermeasures performance monitoring. Nick, you're back up.
Yes, sir. So we will let into this presentation quite nicely from our safety performance target setting. The MPO talks a lot about safety. We have Destination Zero, and the big impetus for the study is, showing the safety improvements that have been done in the region, not only by the MPO and our priority projects, but also kind of using the TAC and collecting all the work that the locals have been doing, and essentially creating a comprehensive database of all the safety countermeasures that have been implemented in the region, and then doing a before and after analysis to see what kind of effects those are having on not only safety but also mobility in the region. So from talking with the FDOT Safety Office and our local partners, we were able to collect 123 projects. And for safety, we have access to the Signal 4 database, which is essentially all the crashes in the state. And that goes back to 2014, and the last completed year was 2024. So we brought all of that in, as well as FDOT's Regional Integrated Transportation Information System, or RITIS for short, so like mobility data. And so once we had all these projects in and the data that we wanted to analyze, we looked at not all crashes, as well as serious and fatal injuries, as well as types of crashes, such as angle or rear end. And then also looking at pedestrian bicycle crashes, as well as time of day. And then for mobility metrics, we looked at 3 different things: the level of time travel reliability, the planning time index, and the observed speed versus the posted speed.
Were all these projects in Sarasota, Manatee County, 142, okay.
Yep, yeah, within
You
Sarasota,
said,
Manatee
yeah.
County. And then, so this is kind of getting into the methodology. We essentially just, for safety, we applied a 150-foot buffer, and we chose projects that had 3 years before and 3 years after to kind of get a fuller picture of the impact they were having on safety. So as a result of that, we have 38 projects that were analyzed for safety, because unsurprisingly, I guess, polling people for safety projects does skew more recent. So we have those inventory, but we just didn't have the before and after data. So this is definitely something we're going to revisit later on, run those projects as well as inventory new ones. For mobility, we just applied a 1 year before and 1 year after, and had 72 projects analyzed. And just to visualize this for our visual learners here, myself included, on the left, you have a map of all of the safety countermeasures that were submitted. And then you have a visualization of the buffer applied, and those little dots, you can see if they fall within that, we associated it with that safety improvement, and if it fell without, it wasn't. And then, of course, there was some manual quality control if there was one that was slightly outside of it, and we felt that it should be included, we did that. Same the other way. And essentially what we have is that buffer, and then dividing based on the project. These were the crashes before the countermeasure, and these were the crashes after, and comparing those figures. And not to give everyone number fatigue here, but I'll just go over some of the highlights. So total crashes, we did see an increase in total crashes, but a decrease in serious injury and fatal ones. And the total crashes is one of the inherent limitations in the study. This is a very fast growing region. There's more traffic. So is likely going to be more crashes, but we definitely consider it a win that severe crashes were down, as well as nighttime, KSI, Eagle, and bike theft. And getting into the specific types of safety countermeasures we analyzed, we had 15 roundabout projects that were analyzed, and this aligned with national research on the effect of roundabouts, where there is a slight uptick in total crashes, but the severe ones because are far lower, because you get rid of the possibility of T-bone crashes and a lot of the dangerous situations that are presented by four-way signalized intersection. And similar story with intersection improvements, which include plenty of other things that are not roundabouts, like constructing medians or kind of reconfiguring the area. And similar for lighting projects, unsurprisingly, we saw a decrease in nighttime crashes. We had one sidewalk project analyzed, and there were no bicyclist or pedestrian fatalities before or after, but serious injuries did decrease, and the shared lane marking saw just moderate gains, which is kind of what we would expect as well. For mobility results, really the only two things to take away from this is that roundabout projects worked as intended. The speed was decreased, which is the intent, but the reliability of roundabouts in terms of mobility improved. And as far as all of the other types of countermeasures, there was, as we've covered, there were safety gains, but really not much change in mobility. So that shows it's not a clear one-to-one trade-off. You can have both. as far as next steps, this is something, it's just a framework that we want to continue to use moving forward. As I said, we have any projects already inventory that if we just revisit in a couple years, we'll have the data to get a before and after analysis. And going forward, it's definitely, we want to keep adding the local, all the work the locals are doing, as well as FDOT and our priority projects that are implemented, getting them into that database. And we will be leveraging the results to kind of prioritize what's working, and, you know, looking at cost as well to see most bang for our buck, so to speak. And that's what the dashboard looks like on the left, and these are just like URLs for anyone who wants to look at these details. I recommend the dashboard being used on a desktop computer, very well on mobile. And with that, I'll take any questions anyone may have on this.
Any comments or questions? Thank you, Nick. I guess I will now entertain a motion to recommend to the board adoption of the safety countermeasure performance monitoring. Is there a vote? Second, Bob Gauss, and then Keith Green seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. Now move to action item 5.F, the Ed Smith planning study. Jared and Trevor.
Good evening, everyone. Jared Schneider with Kinley Ward and Trevor Poole with Kinley Ward as well. Wanted to give y'all an update on the Ed Smith Stadium study. We were last year in October, so this is really the culmination of 13 months of a lot of hard work with the city of Sarasota, as well as Sarasota County. Thought tonight we could go through each one of the pages of the 200-page document. It's really going to summarize what we showed in October. Really four main outcomes, what we were really looking at corridor improvements across a number of corridors, and I'll show you the study area again here in a minute. And then a toolkit of multimodal improvements. So really what we try to do is build on top of what Nick just showed as well, countermeasures that could be short-term all the way to long-term. So if we don't do all of the corridor improvements, we start with some short-terms improvements. Estimated costs as well as funding sources as well. We talked a little bit about that already, and then some concepts that we drew out for implementation. All right, to orient y'all, we're just northeast of downtown Sarasota. We have US 301 on the west, Geneva Road on the east, and then Fruitville Road on the south, 17th Street. It's a pretty large area with around 10,000 folks that live in this area, and a mixture of 5 to 6 different neighborhoods. We also have a number of different jurisdictions. So we have city corridors in yellow, county corridors in blue, and state corridors in red. I should also note that we coordinated with Breeze as well as far as transit ridership in the area. Okay, so I'm going to have Trevor talk a little bit about the corridors I just showed you. We went through a prioritization criteria process and highlighted a number of the different improvements that we're looking at.
Sure. So yeah, as Jared mentioned, there was a lot of coordination with City of Sarasota and Sarasota County throughout this entire project. As you can see in the map, there were 10 total corridors that were studied. On your right side of the screen, top 5 corridors are shown here. So we'll just kind of briefly do a high level overview of some of the recommendations on those corridors. So starting with 12th Street, the segment that was highest prioritized is the western portion of 12th Street that runs from US 301 to Tuttle. So this section is mainly characterized by industrial development and access control problems. So to combat those issues, we first implemented a median to control access and also limited curb cuts, as well as provided a protected bike lane and wider sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. Moving on to 17th Street, this is one of our highest crash corridors throughout the entire study area. So pedestrian bicycle safety was a really key concern here. So a multi-use trail on the south side, as well as a landscape median and lots of intersection improvements throughout the corridor were crucial here. Moving on to Geneva Road, we are proposing a multi-use trail on the eastern portion of this roadway. as well as reduced curb radii for some intersection improvements, mainly at Fruitville Road, Circus Boulevard, and 17th Street. Tuttle Avenue, so this roadway is really a key community connector for this study area. You've got Tuttle Elementary, you've got Cal Ripken ball fields, you've got Ed Smith Stadium that's located directly on Tuttle. And then further north, you've got tennis courts and the BMX track. So a lot going on this roadway. So we really want to make sure that not only north-south connections were safe, but also getting over Tuttle Avenue. So we've included an additional mid-block crossing just north of Tuttle Elementary School. And then lastly, just want to highlight Lockwood Ridge. This 2-lane roadway is mostly residential, fairly low AAGT compared to the rest of the study area. So we've included a multi-use trail on the eastern portion of this roadway to connect all the way up to 17th Street. That can then connect to 17th Street Trail and Circus Trail. So there's our rendering, and then additional landscaping for shaded pedestrian walkways. And then last thing project wise, we did have a set of specific Ed Smith related improvements. And we've distributed this to the Orioles themselves. So they can take a look, and most of these improvements include wayfinding signage and traffic flow for game days. And then I know I kind of covered a lot very quickly, and there are 5 more corridors that I didn't even cover at all. So if you want a deeper dive into the specific projects on the corridors, we have this dashboard that's available on the MPO's website. And then I'll dish it back to Jared for funding and implementation.
One thing I wanted to highlight too, to build off of the projects that Trevor just presented, I want to commend NPO staff, City of Sarasota, and Sarasota County staff. One of the things that I thought was great about this is we didn't just look at the data. We drove all the corridors, we went on a bike audit, we walked them, and that really did help give us a different sense of really complementary with the data, what we were seeing there. So, with that, we talked about funding. One of the things I'm happy to say is a lot of these things can be phased. So some of that's already being done through the Click to Fix 301. There's crosswalk markings, paint, textile warning mats, wayfinding. We feel like some of those things can be done sooner than later. So we've outlined for each of the corridors, short-term to mid-term to long-term costs. A lot of those are already on their way, so I'm happy to say that. This is one that we continually talk about nationally. Funding sources, grants are changing as we speak, but we're just highlighting some potential options out there. The Bill grant program I want to highlight is something that is due this month, or I'm sorry, next month. So really just outlining some grant programs that we can look at for next year to continue the momentum. So we've highlighted some ideas there. Yeah, again, really wanted to thank you all as well. I know this is the 4th time we've been here in front of you on this project. I know it's been a lot of information we've been sharing, but happy to say it's been a really good process and look forward to continuing the momentum. So with that, we'll entertain any questions you might have. So,
in the estimates, or excuse me, back up one. Have you found that we're even put multi-use trails or sidewalks that county already has easement and you won't have to purchase land?
Yes, we did look at, I want to say Shane's one that we did highlight.
Yeah, we did look into that, and that also factors into the cost estimates themselves.
Okay.
So you'll see in the full report, you'll see cost estimates, and those will include a percentage for acquisition if necessary.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Very good. Thank you very much. I will now entertain a motion to recommend to the board adoption of the Ed Smith planning study. We have a motion from us. We have a second? Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. That concludes our action item business. We now have a couple of presentations to go forward.
Christy already gave her update, so
Yeah.
skip over that.
Christy, glad to see you back again.
I don't have anything else to add on her from. Yeah, you're, I'm sorry. Thank you.
That is too.
Are we skipping over the FDOT report?
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay,
All right, that's good. That's good.
That's
thank you.
no meeting.
We're gonna the MPO report.
But
Nina?
just looking around like.
So hopefully you all received this, sort of middle of last week. It was something we sent out after the agenda packets went out. And there's really two main parts to my report on this. This is something that we bring to the committees every year. We'll bring a draft to you now in January, and then we bring the final draft in March and take it to the MPO board for adoption. So at this point, we are looking for inconsistencies, we're looking for errors, for last minute applications to be submitted. We'll make some changes through February and then we'll bring it back. So the list that you see, the draft 2026 list was developed through applications submitted by the local jurisdictions. So they submit a priority application to the MPO. We review the applications to make sure that they are, one, eligible, and eligibility is basically that they have been identified in the long range transportation plan. It's not in the long range transportation plan, it goes into the local needs list, which is that appendix. And then we score the projects against the MPO's goals and objectives, and then we put this list together. So most of the work that we'll be doing moving forward is with the jurisdictions to refine the list. But this is good for you to know that these are the projects that your jurisdictions are actively pursuing funding for. So the second part of it is that if you've been around, you'll see that the list looks very, very different than it has previously. And so as Ryan mentioned, with the adoption of the long range plan, we really found that this was an opportunity to restructure the list, partly because many of the programs that were in the previous long range plan didn't carry over into the 2050. So the previous list had the multimodal emphasis corridors, the FDOT partnership programs, those things didn't carry forward, and the rules attached to them didn't carry forward. So there was a need to restructure. But we also wanted to take an opportunity to use this as more of a public facing document. And so that when folks are looking at this list, they actually know what it means. And they know what the different projects are and how they relate to the long range plan. So on the first page, we offer some context that the foundation of the project priorities really is the long range transportation plan. We try and define what the cost feasible plan looks like. So it's broken out into two main parts, which is the pipeline projects. These are projects that are sort of lined up and 100% funded over the next 25 years. And then with the remaining funds that we had, we developed some funding programs. And those funding programs target very particular types of transportation improvements like intersections or safety or resiliency, capacity and so forth. Those programs are not 100% funded. So we will be looking at local funds, grants, private partners to help fund those projects. And then in developing the long range plan, if you recall, when we do the needs assessment, there is a much longer list of transportation needs than there is available funding. So we really had to prioritize the projects that made it into the cost feasible plan. But those projects that are still eligible and consistent with the long range plan, but that aren't funded are considered our unfunded needs. So if funding became available through a grant, or if through an appropriation, and it required in order for it to be eligible, it needed to be consistent with the LRTP. That's our unfunded need list. So if money fell from the sky, we can move that up and it can become eligible. And then what's also different from the previous list is that we moved the local needs as an appendix and kind of try to separate it out entirely from the list of project priorities. So what we had noticed in previous years was that there was a lot of confusion between the priorities and then this random attachment at the bottom, which was our local priorities. And the local priorities are not eligible for MPO funding. The only way that they would become eligible is if the long range transportation plan was amended, which is an immense effort, right? So we do list the local needs for informational purposes, but there's no funding consideration for them through the MPO. And we're also hoping that this is easier to read for our partners at FDOT so that they have a very clear understanding of what projects need to stay in the work program if they're already programmed, and which projects can they line up based on our cost feasible plan. So we're hoping it's a little bit more informative this time around, a little bit more consistent with our long range plan, and an easier tool for our FDOT partners to work with. So happy to take questions about the project, but also happy for feedback on our reformatted list. If you love it or hate it, I'd love to know.
Sure. Thank you, Nina.
Sure.
Comments or questions? Yes?
I think it is great, a great way to look at things, it's very clear, lot more clear than previous presentations or packages. So there's another way to put it. If it's not in the long range plan, it's not gonna happen. And the next long range plan really will be in 5 years.
Yes,
So for 5 years, this is it, basically.
for the MPO discretionary funds.
Right,
So
for the-
jurisdiction, they're always able to look for a grant opportunities,
Yeah.
federal or state grant opportunities. Local funds are always available, but as far as MPO discretionary funds, not gonna happen.
Right, so you guys can focus on these two, you know you're not gonna have to jump in somewhere when someone comes out of the clear blue sky and says, hey, this is a real priority. You can now say, well, then get it on the long range plan.
Exactly.
Et cetera.
Yeah.
Great, good for you.
The goal was to tighten up this plan and have very clear rules. And if it really is a priority, then let's talk about amending the plan, which is a very big conversation for the MPO to have. But yeah, the idea was we wanted no questions about which projects we can really pursue.
But let's see. Thanks.
David, you want to add something?
No, I think Nina covered it well. This was does not mean that, because there are other sources of money that can fund these unfunded needs. And, I mean, the private sector builds lots of transportation projects because new developments go in. And local jurisdictions have their own capital improvement programs, some of which are not regionally significant projects. And they, we did not try to plan out their money the way we did the federal funds as we're required to. So, and the state has, kind of had a history of saying, well, if it was somewhere in this big long list of projects, then we think it's okay to fund it. And we wanted to clarify that for them so that the process of prioritization is cleaner and clearer.
I've got one technical question, I guess. There's a project CFP 71 that's in the unfunded category for River Road widening from Winchester to County Line Phase 4. But then on page 5, it has a long number, same River Road Winchester to County Phase 5 is funded, or is in federal and state funding.
Those are
What, does 5 come before 4 or 4 come before 5, or that seems backwards to me, but I don't know what phase 4 and phase 5 consist of, but they're both construction.
Let's make sure we're looking at the right project.
It's
So just to say, the phases don't always go in order. There's another project in Sarasota County that's ABC and C is happening before A, and it's not always in order. But I know that both of those projects are being moved by Sarasota County now. I think design is supposed to be finishing up this year. But those are the kinds of notes that I want to see. So if it should be moved up, then I'll move it up for the final draft.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I hate to monopolize, but is it safe to say that the technical advisory board folks have looked at this also? They know if something's been moved, they might have thought something else was happening. But they might have thought it was in the long range plan and it was maybe prioritized for funding, and now it was moved down because it's not, because of the discussions that they might have together on who needs money to go where.
Sure. It's safe to say that they know exactly where the project should be in the long range plan. We worked with them on developing the cost feasible from the start. With that said, the technical advisory committee members are also submitting projects that they know are not eligible. I had a call from a county staff member saying, I've got a whole list of projects and half of them aren't eligible. Is it still okay for me to submit? And the answer is yes, they can still submit for them. But they should have a very good idea of where the projects are. I know we're gonna get another project added to the list in the next few weeks that is not consistent with the plan. So based on this list, they should know it's gonna go down into the local needs. But it's also used as a conversational tool, so they can reach out to us and say, hey, we want to have a conversation about this. But then we can say we have some pretty clear rules about the list as well.
Good for you, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very good. Thank you. Brian?
Yep, that's it. I'll keep this brief as well. As I didn't previously mention, back in the fall, we had our federal certification joint process. So our partners at DOT, Federal Highway, FTA, we had a half day, and I admittedly has shrunk since my first 3 that I've done of these. Used to be a couple days long. Now this one was only about 4 hours and was done virtually. So it was an interesting process. We had some good conversations. We were noted for 3 noteworthy practices, one being around our organizational structure, so a number of our committees, how we've integrated public transportation into the board process. Safety was noted, Nina and Nick's great work in safety, as well as some other organizational aspects we were noted for. We had no corrective actions. Those are mandated things that we're required to fix, so that's good news. And 2 minor recommendations to incorporate some other language into the tip. One was to make our tip layers, aka GIS layers, available on our Geo Hub, so where all of our information's kept. We made that change already, as well as including LRTP pages. We've had a back and forth conversation with the department. Sometimes DOT adds projects to this tip and tip that have not been identified in our LRTP, so we're kind of in a catch-22. So we've had some good conversations about that, and what your next step should be. So Federal Highway's satisfied with our response at this time. Any project that's in the LRTP has been made available for page number in the tip as well. So we're looking forward to taking this to the board in January. We asked them to come down and be part of the board meeting, but at this point they declined. Will likely not be there. We'll see if they will be attending virtually as well. So really that's all I have on that front. We won't be due again until same timeline, fall of 2029. And we'll meet with them again, and we do meet with them consistently. The Florida division has seen significant decreases in staffing. They went from about 15 to 3 over the last year, so they're required to do not a lot of people available. So it is kind of hit and miss with Federal Highway at the moment, so they've delegated a lot of those tasks to FDOT as the pass-through agency. So FDOT does a lot of our invoicing and oversight on that front at this point. So any questions on this, I'm happy to take. We really do appreciate your participation in this process. They really did note the committees were a strong suit of what we do here at the NPL.
So where are the Federal Highway Administration people located?
In Florida, in Tallahassee, FTA's regions out of Atlanta. And then obviously their central office people are based out of DC. But
so those 3 people that
the Florida division is down to 3 people. Yeah.
They've always been in Tallahassee,
Correct.
and 3 are still in Tallahassee.
Correct. Yeah,
Well,
the other 12 were either reduced in force or took early payouts. So that's where we're at on that front. As of now, we've passed and are certified to continue operating for the next 4 years. So I'll take any other questions. Fairly straightforward process. Yeah, we also, I'll add on that last piece, we were audited 3 times last year, we passed all of those with flying colors, so good job, David. We were done single audit for the county, DOT audit for our joint, and then the federal certification as well. So we passed 3 audits in 1 year. I think we're arguably the most over audited agency with the amount of money that was made available to us in history, but I do appreciate everyone's work on that. Same thing, our TAC is very cooperative in the UPWP process, and you'll see that come to you all in March and in May for adoption for our budget process as well. So
Curious, is that money actually go into an NPO account?
no.
That's so the audit's really
Correct.
not.
We have about $100 to our name. It really had.
It's reimbursement based and it feeds through the state and the county. And then, so we spend it and then the county we apply to get reimbursed, county.
County pays for it first, and then state pays them back. So no, we do not.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I
We
think
do not have a bank account.
Not a bank account,
with
you're not-
$1 billion in it.
yeah, okay.
Lots of oversight and we appreciate that because it makes it easy.
Covers our stuff.
Yeah, I see, but this seems like a waste of audit money.
It is, and we've pointed out a lot of that conversation in central office. We meet with them quarterly and have noted a lot of those things of, there has been conversations of making NPOs direct recipients of federal funds. That would also rely, and our staff would have to grow significantly to make ourselves a fully functional. We pay Manatee County to be one of our fiscal auditors. I don't think David and Rachel would want to take that all on by themselves with our team of 2. They've got a team of 100. So Those are some of the conversations we have, but it's a moving target. My last piece on all this will be authorization was brought up a couple times tonight. Our current authorization runs out September 26th. I do believe that it will likely look like a continuing resolution at this point. I know part of a committee out of the Association of MPOs out of DC, and there's a lot of movement on the reauthorization, but they'd have to have a lot of work done by the middle of March or April to get introduced into this cycle.
That's coming out of Tallahassee.
No, out of DC.
So the federal government funds you,
Correct.
not the state government.
Yeah, no, the state does not fund us. They hold our money, I would say, in a large escrow account. Is an easier way just to say it. But we'll be looking at that process. We're involved in it, the state's involved in it. We're pushing for a lot more formula funds over discretionary grants. So we know how to apply those, we know how to make them work. So it'll be an interesting process over the next year. So likely will be a CR to keep us funded and moving forward, but it'll likely take several years to get a finalized future infrastructure act. Yeah, David?
I would add to the audit is that we're getting ready to start another one.
Correct. Yeah, we're going to number 4. So, yeah, it's always good. Any other questions?
Ryan, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The last order of business is that we need to elect a chair and a vice chair for 2026. Business that we should have done back in October had we had a quorum. For those of you who may be new to the committee, we alternate chairs year to year from Manatee to Sarasota. And with the chair this year in Manatee County, the chair for 2026 will be from Sarasota County. And with that, I think it would be appropriate to open the floor for nominations. And we have a vice chair from Sarasota County, and I just open the floor for nominations.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate myself for vice chair.
We're gonna take a separate vote on vice chair, Mr. Green. We're gonna vote for the chair right here.
Make a motion, Tom, to be chair.
I'll second that.
The second, third, fourth, and fifth.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? All those in favor of Mr. Ratsky as our next chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Well, yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Pass you the gavel. We will now open the floor for nominations for vice chair, and this representative will be from Manatee County.
Nominate Ray Dowling.
Second.
No.
Bob Gauss.
Ray Dowling.
Yes.
Bob is nominating Ray. Okay.
Just, you ready for a year?
No.
Ms. Bailey has some.
It is,
No, that,
Oh,
I got
yeah.
We have a second for Ray.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate myself for
Just a
vice.
second, Mr. Green. We have a second for the nomination for
I second.
Oh, that was John.
John.
Yeah.
Clarify, there is a technicality that a nominee must have served on the committee for at least a year.
Ah,
Thank you, Nina.
Bob, we had that problem a couple years ago, if you recall. So she hasn't been on long enough to serve.
Ms. Rachel.
I'd be happy to nominate
Well,
Bob.
she can't be the vice chair that she's.
You are,
Yes.
Ray would like to nominate Bob Gauss for vice chair.
Don't do that to me.
Second,
No.
I second. Bob, you got it.
So we have a nomination for Bob Gauss and Ray and a second from X.
I second.
Are there any other nominations from the floor?
I'll see you at lunch tomorrow.
I would like to nominate myself for vice chair.
We have a second for vice chair.
I'll second.
From Mr. Ratsky. Okay, so we now have 2 candidates for vice chair. I think maybe we'll just take this by a show of hands. So all those in favor of Mr. Gauss for vice chair, please raise your hands.
Question over here.
I'm sorry.
I just had a question to make sure that both of them have been equally on a year and qualify as a full year.
Both are eligible to serve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. By show of hands, may I have those in favor of Bob Gauss for vice chair? You have a count? You taking a count here?
6.
So
And all those in favor of Mr. Green for vice chair, do we have a count? We have 3. Okay. So we have a 6-3 in favor of Mr. Gauss. Is that what you got?
That's what I got.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sounds like the football game last night.
Very good. That concludes our official business. We will go once around the table to wrap the meeting up. Start with Mr. Green.
Well, as of today, I just realized that I've been now serving on the Bradenton City Planning Commission now for the last 4 years, and I've just been actually reappointed back in December. But definitely, I want to also give my congratulations to Bob for being our new vice chair, and look forward to serving along with you, sir.
John?
No, I pass.
Mr. Ratsky?
I don't have anything.
Nothing today.
John?
Thank you for your trust.
You got $100 you can.
I would like to, acknowledge Mr. Hutchinson. I believe you're retiring soon, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all the work you've done.
Thank you. Some of you I've known.
Oh, yeah,
for a while.
yet.
John, I've known for as long as I've been here.
Oh, wow.
You'll have to wait till I say so.
By the
way, it's over here.
Retiring or quitting?
No, I'm
retired.
So, but I wanted to introduce, I mean, I'm feel like we've done a lot of great projects, big projects, little projects over the last 15 years. And we've upped the game of how we contribute to the, to the transportation planning process and how we involve the public. The latest round, if you haven't seen any of the safety videos that our staff does in-house, you've got to watch those on YouTube. Maybe next time they'll run some of them. If we'll have a better AV system by then. And I want to recognize, the board has already designated Ryan Brown to take over February 7th as executive director. Megan Louie has been hired as planning manager to replace that position and help work with the Crackerjack team we have already, Nina, Nick, and we've had Jane Lee's just joined us as another data scientist and urban planner who is going to contribute to this effort. So you're in good hands.
Good.
And the longest serving staff member will be Rachel, who's always behind the scenes, but she helps make a lot of stuff happen here and works with David on our finances and on the administrative side. And Grace, you didn't see tonight, but handles our outreach and public information and does a great job. If you're not subscribed to our Tuesday transportation talk, you can sign up on the website or get involved. And you probably are getting those. You've probably seen the videos for that through those same links. Anyway, it's been a great experience to work here. We have dedicated elected officials who really do care about transportation, and it's been a pleasure to contribute to the process.
Thank you, David, for everything. Next, David?
Nope.
Say?
Nope.
Stephanie? I'll wrap it up by saying thank you for the chance to sit in this chair. I've been impressed with this committee's work and the questions you asked at the presentations. They help to bring forward some good issues, and I look forward to continue to serve on the committee and to see you all again in February.
No, March.
March, very good.
Kurt, you've done a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn?
So.
We're done.
You know, I was like, what? I was get that.
Oh.